Hello, my name is Blake Robinson, and in this video I'm going to be going over my deck comparisons project that I've been working on. It was initially a final project that I submitted to Harvard CS50 course, but I've continued to modify it, make improvements to it, make it run more efficiently ever since I submitted the program, just as I've gotten better at coding. So the idea behind this program is it takes any number of deck lists as inputs. If one deck list is submitted, then it just provides some data surrounding that deck list. And if there's multiple deck lists, it will provide the data for all the deck lists, as well as make suggestions on whether it thinks that if those four decks were to play against each other, those decks would form a balanced pod. So let's do a couple examples here. If I just go to Moxfield, I'm going to literally pull some random deck lists here. That's got 102 cards, so we're not going to look at that one. Right? Commander decks have 100 cards in them. So here we go. Here's a 100 card deck list. We'll copy that, and we just put one deck list per line. We can go ahead and pull this one. Why not? I'm going to try to get a wide range of deck lists here. So, I want to be able to show off the suggestion section. So, take a look at this one. Nope. Sure. Here's a Magda Commander deck. Why not? And last but not least, I'm actually going to just search Moxfield for a deck that has CDH in the title. CDH meaning competitive. Crick. You know what? Let's grab like a multicolor deck. Sure. Why not? 5-colored Kenrith. Let's pull this one. All right, we're gonna hit submit. And it does take about 30 to 40 seconds to process per deck list. We're filtering through quite a bit of data here. And while it's loading, I'll kind of walk through what the goal of this program is. So what my program is currently processing is it's forming a budget for each deck. It's calculating the salt score for each deck, as well as the saltiest card. It's looking at the average mana value of each deck, and then it calculates how many competitive level cards are played in each deck. And the reason I'm pulling all of this information is that these are all relatively good indicators of how balanced a game is going to be. So if one deck is severely over or under the budget of every other deck, it may be a good idea for that person to change to either a cheaper or deck with, higher priced cards to try to match everybody else at the table. There's a concept that's been coined in the Commander community called the Rule Zero conversation, which is basically people going through what the intentions of their decks are, how the deck looks to win, what type of game that person is trying to have, and then typically that's been associated with a power level. So the one problem with this is that so many people say my deck is a 7, but there's no data or objectivity to that number, right? A 7 to one person can mean something completely different than a 7 to another person. So this program looks to help facilitate that Rule Zero conversation. Rather than just saying, we don't prescribe any numbers to deck lists in this program, all we're doing is providing the data and pointing out possible imbalances that could exist when a random group of decks play against each other. So as you can see, our data has pulled up here, and we'll kind of go through it. So first of all, we just pull out the commander of each deck, and we have that listed as the deck name. And then in the second column, we have the cheapest printing budget. So kind of go through that. If we were to look at this Kenrith the Returned King deck, and we were to go to artifacts, right? We can check artifacts. Sol Ring is played in most commander decks. And as you can see on the left here, if we look at that TCG player pricing, it says that this Sol Ring is $1.20. If we were to actually go to TCG player and type in Sol Ring, you can see the price of Sol Ring ranges from it looks like $1.20 all the way up to, on this page I see a $5 Sol Ring. But we could even look at, like, this masterpiece version of Sol Ring, which is selling for $650. But in a given commander deck, it doesn't matter if you're playing the $1.20 Sol Ring or if you're playing the $650 Sol Ring. They're all going to do the exact same thing in any given deck. So what my program does is it scrubs TCG player for every available printing of that card and pulls the cheapest price that's available and uses that to calculate the budget of the deck, right? To have that price contribute towards the total budget. That way we're removing the bling factor that can exist in decks where, people's decks might be very expensive because they're using the most expensive version of cards. They've got, a lot of foils or alternate arts or secret layers or whatever the case may be. Even though if they were to just use the normal printing or the cheapest printing of that card, the deck would be quite a bit cheaper. So that's how we're normalizing for that. Next, each card has a salt score associated with it. So if we go to EDH Rec, right? EDH Rec is a deck building tool for the Commander format. And one thing that they do every year is they create a survey where they have people vote on what cards make them the saltiest, right? What cards do they not like to see when they sit down to play a game of Commander? Usually salty cards are associated with stacks effects, so things that prevent your opponents from playing. They're also associated with like hyper efficient draw and removal and ramp. So right, hyper efficient draw, we're looking at Rhystic Study. Ramp, we're looking at Dockside Extortionist. Removal or interaction, right? Free counter spells a lot of times show up here. Also, it can be associated with combos. So Thassa's Oracle is probably one of the most efficient win conditions in Commander, and so it obviously shows up on the salt score list. So every card is voted on and receives a score between 0 and 4. And you can see the saltiest card here is Stasis at 2.92. So what we're doing here in the program is going through each card, figuring out the salt score associated with that card, and adding it to the total salt score of the deck. We also keep track of what the saltiest card is and list that here. And next we're looking at the mana value of cards. So we're to just pull, a random card here. Let's look at Jin Gitaxias Core Augur. Jin Gitaxias has it costs 8 generic mana, 1 blue and 1 blue, so it has a mana value of 10, meaning you have to spend 10 resources in the game in order to cast that spell. So typically speaking, the speed of a deck is associated with the mana value. The lower a mana value is, that means the cheaper the average card is in the deck, and the more efficient your spells are. Higher mana value cards are more associated with like bigger splasher spells, right? They can still be very powerful, but they will often come in later in the game. So here we track the mana value and make sure that every deck that's playing has a mana value that is somewhat relatable, meaning they're all playing at around the same speed. Finally, we are looking at the number of competitive level cards present in each deck. So There's a website, cedhstaples.com. It redirects you to this Moxfield database, which this database takes a look at deck lists that have been submitted for tournament level play, so competitive Commander games, and they keep track of each card that shows up in a minimum of 10% of the decks. I believe that threshold is 10%. And if any given card shows up in 10% of those deck lists, it adds it to this list. So this list is just compiled of 230 of the most commonly played competitive level cards. So in this section of the program, what we're doing is we're checking each of these cards in the deck list and seeing if they overlap with any of the cards in this database. If so, we just tag it as its competitive level card and add it to the competitive level count. So after we have, kind of the bird's eye view of each deck, you can see down here we've got suggestions, right? I intentionally tried to pick decks that would not be very balanced if they were to play against each other. And as you can see, right, the budgets of decks range from $58 to $2,300. Salt scores have a wide variance, and the number of competitive level cards have a wide variance. So, so here we go through the suggestions, right? It suggests that Lord of Nazgul, which is the most expensive deck, could consider switching to a more budget deck. Kenrith has the highest salt score, so it suggests that this person switch to a deck that has less stacks, control, or combo potential. And then the mana values are all actually relatively close to each other, right? They range from 1.76 to 2.73. So it doesn't make a suggestion based on the mana value. But then again, when we look at the competitive level cards, Kenrith has 81 competitive cards in it. And so it suggests that this deck switch to maybe a more casual one. After we go through that bird's view data or description of each deck, we can go in and actually look at card level data. So on this page, it just goes through each commander and shows which cards in each deck are priced at $5 or more, and adds them to the list. Right, and here's where we can see a very stark difference between the deck lists. This deck has, maybe 50 cards that are $5 or more, whereas the Most Dangerous Gamer has one card that is $5 or more, which is Necropotence. So we go through each of those. We also have card level salt data here. So any card that has received a salt score of 0.75 or more gets added to this list. And finally, we make a list for each of the competitive level cards that are in each deck. So anyways, this is the foundation of the program. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My contact information, as always, is listed on my website. You can also see it on the screen here. And in another video, I'm going to be going through the Python code that I created in order to make this program work. So check out that video if you're interested more in the behind-the-scenes work for it. And feel free to reach out if you have any questions. I hope you enjoy playing around with this tool, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.